I was a philosophy major at UC Santa Barbara, and I had a professor who one day decided to give us a slightly unusual test. He picks up his chair, he puts it on his desk, and he simply writes, "Prove this chair does not exist." The whole class goes to work on these long, drawn-out explanations. I'm done in 30 seconds. I walk to the front of class, hand him my paper, and I walk out. A couple days later, I show back up at class, and a buddy of mine calls me a smartass when I tell him what I'd written on my paper. When I got the highest grade in class that day, I shrugged and said, "I'd rather be a smartass than a dumbass." See, what I had written on that paper in just 30 seconds was, "What chair?" Now, make no mistake, as I've failed my way to freedom into a life of luxury that's allowed me to travel all over the world, spend a month in Bali with my beautiful wife and soulmate Eden, and move into a beautiful ocean view home in Del Mar, California, I assure you, I've been called things far worse than a smartass to both my face and behind it, and I've absolutely acted like a dumbass. Just ask my mom, who's sitting right there. However, it has been my willingness to look at things slightly differently that's allowed me to live a life that at one point I never thought I'd be living. I'd like to offer you a strategy today, a simple concept really, and something that admittedly is the combination of minds far greater than my own. In fact, it's nothing that you don't have access to already. All I've done is systematized a way to leave myself first and leave myself out. Out of the self-defeating thoughts, out of the sabotage, and out of playing small in life. Now, how many of you would be interested in working your way out of some of those things? Well, 6 years ago, all of those things owned me. So there I was, 27 years old. My ex-fiance and I have blown through $80,000 in 6 months. And 2 weeks after the save the date invitations are sent out, she starts in on me. "You need to get a job. Why can't you just be normal? Who do you think you are? You need to stop living in fantasy land." My parents were right about you. Raise your hand if you have some dream stealers in your life. Raise your hand if you've had people tell you who you're supposed to be. 2 days later, the wedding is off. I moved back into my mom's house, and for the next 7 months, her couch would be the scene of my personal hell. Now, in hindsight, those 7 months were the most important 7 months of my life thus far. And before it was all roses and cotton candy and daily gratitude journals, things got dark on this couch in a hurry. The barrage of thoughts running through my mind were so intense that I couldn't sleep for 2.5 weeks. "You idiot, what the hell were you thinking? Loser, no woman's ever gonna want to be with you." And the two things I thought the most: what would be the least painful way to kill myself? And what would be the least painful way for mom to find me? I'd go on to lose 15 pounds in that same 2.5 weeks. In a funny, not so funny moment, I joked with mom that I was going to write a weight loss bestseller called "Drop 'em with Depression." Day after day, I was reminded of what a failure I'd become. Day after day, I was reminded of how alone I really felt. Have you ever been so overcome with sadness and shame and guilt that you felt paralyzed? Have you ever been so overwhelmed with negative thoughts that they suffocate your every breath? Now, before I go on, how many of you know some people in your lives that are just experts in everyone else's life except for their own, of course? And they are masters at regurgitating trite little cliche sayings when you're in a bad spot. I call them Tinkerbell talks. You know Tinkerbell, that cute little fairy that would follow Peter Pan around? "Just think happy thoughts, just think happy thoughts." And I'm thinking, why don't we just send you and your cute little tights back to never, never talk to me again land? Now, after several months of being a complete recluse on that couch, a friend of mine was giving me a Tinkerbell talk, and it's something I'm grateful to pay forward to today. "Zach, you can either go through this or you can grow through this. Your choice." And what he said that day hit me square between the eyes. And it really began to sink in over the subsequent days, weeks, months, and years. Something began to shift. I began to look at things in a new way. I found comfort in knowing that there were other people like me. In fact, it turns out that 1 out of every 10 North Americans suffers from depression. And so admittedly, I didn't feel so bad knowing that I wasn't the only one who'd want to drown Tink in her fairy dust. I also found comfort in knowing that the average age of people's first divorce was 30 years old, so maybe I wasn't such a social outcast after all. And slowly, very slowly, I began to love myself. Every day, my mom would come in, and she'd say, just put one foot in front of the other, Zachy. Just little, tiny baby steps, and then inch by inch, it's a cinch. When I consider those 6 years and everything that's transpired since, I can't help but be reminded of the Shawshank Redemption. Now, how many of you have either seen or read the Shawshank Redemption? Andy Dufresne was a man who was falsely accused and wrongly imprisoned by a crime that he didn't commit. And for 19 years, using a tiny rock hammer, he chipped away, and he chipped away, and he chipped away at his prison cell wall until one day he climbed out and he tunneled his way through 500 yards of the most disgusting, foul, nasty sewage until he falls into a river, and he stands in this torrential rainfall where his soul is rightly cleansed as he basks in his newfound freedom. What I've learned is that, like Andy Dufresne, oftentimes we too are wrongly accused and falsely imprisoned, accused of not being good enough or too stupid or undeserving of success, and all because we believed a lie that says we are unworthy of love. What I've also noticed is that we are the prosecution, the judge, and the jury, and we are the experts in handing out the maximum sentence. And why? All because we believed a story that isn't true based on evidence that's circumstantial at best. Earlier I mentioned that I wanted to offer you a strategy. It's a tool, really. It's my rock hammer. It's what's allowed me to chip away and climb through some of the dirtiest, nastiest, darkest shit you can imagine. Now, make no mistake, this isn't a quick fix. Ask any shark in that card room, they'll tell you the same thing about this as I will about, they'll tell you the same thing about poker as I will about this, life, and leadership. It takes a minute to learn and a lifetime to master. It can, however, provide you with the greatest equalizer I know of, and that's perception. I'd like to introduce you to Iris. In Greek mythology, Iris was the Greek goddess of the rainbow, the messenger of heaven, she who restores peace in nature. By utilizing this Iris properly, you can restore peace in your heart. The first I is for investigate. Investigate your thoughts. Become massively skeptical of that drunken monkey in your head. Begin to ask yourself questions like, what's the value in feeling not good enough? What's the value in thinking I'm undeserving of success? R is for responsibility. What's the accountable version of the story? Ultimately, what you'll find is that your results in life are yours and yours alone, and everything you have you deserve, and everything you deserve you can have. The second I is for invite. Invite yourself to consider a new possibility. And with that, I'd like to invite you to consider a new question. How could it be that you, the real you, would choose into chaos and drama? Show me an unhappy child. Show me a 1-year-old who lacks imagination and wonder. You came into this world lacking judgment, yes, yes?
Yes, yes.
You came into this world seeking love, yes, yes?
Yes, yes.
You came into this world craving adventure, connection, and growth, yes, yes?
Yes, yes.
And you came into this world fearless, yes, yes?
Yes, yes.
So what if you chose to look at life through that lens every day? S is for stretch. When we stretch, we take new actions every day from this new line of thinking, and our view begins to shift. And here's what I noticed when my view shifted. I noticed that life isn't cold, bitter, or hard. Life isn't a struggle or filled with worry. Life is not stuck in the past. Life is not anxiety. None of those things are real. None of those things are possible because none of those descriptors exist in nature. Life does not happen to us. Life happens for us. And just like the iris is responsible for the amount of light that reaches your retina, this iris can be responsible for the amount of light that reaches and in turn comes from your heart. And just like the iris determines the color of your eyes, this iris can determine the color of your life. Can you show me the way to a tree that pops antidepressants like candy? Can you show me to a stream that poisons itself as a way to avoid Have you ever met a bird that wishes it were a horse? Or a pig that judges itself for being fatter than other pigs? No, of course not. And why? Because they just are. They are life, and they come from the same source that you do and I do. And they are perfectly content with just being. And that is peace. And that is freedom. And that is power. And that is leadership. And that is yours the moment you're willing to root yourself in grace, knowing that all things are working in your favor at all times.
Yes.
See, here's the truth. The truth is, I know some shit about some shit, and I don't know shit. But what I do know is this. All of our avoiders, all of the things that we hide behind are merely a shadow, a reflection of the brilliance we crave showing up as in the world every single day. And here's what I figured. If you can light up a cigarette, then you can light up the planet. And if you can pour drinks all night, then you can pour greatness into others. So clap your hands if you believe in fairies. I want you to remember that as leaders, I want to invite you to consider that we must step out of pretense and into substance, and that no matter how dark or scary or traumatic life may seem, you can either buy the bullshit lies and stay stuck in deception, or you can invite yourself to enjoy a new perception. And of course, you can either go through it or you can grow through it. It's your choice.